everybody, and welcome to another edition of Tunnel Vision, a show brought to you by USCFootball.com. I'm your host, Keely Eure, joined by Ryan Abraham, and we have a special guest in the studio from Reno, Troy, Alicia de Artola. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're excited to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is super fun. This is, a little overwhelming and exciting, but
overwhelming. No.
It's my TV debut, Ryan.
Oh, nice.
That's true. Oh, wait.
Big deal.
We do appreciate you coming on, and you get to see all the behind-the-scenes stuff as we're scrambling up to the last second to get everything to work.
Yeah, we have some new systems going on today. That's why you're seeing a lot of different graphics happening right now. I'm getting the hang of it. But as of course, we have new graphics, which means we probably can get YouTube comments up, which is exciting.
Yeah.
And I believe we are live on YouTube, Facebook, and Periscope. So make sure you get your questions in. We're also taking live calls today. You can see the number at the bottom of your screen and at the corner, 512-4-TUNNEL. You can call that. And Grayson, not Chris, Grayson will be, he's in the next room screening the calls, so you can talk to him and have a fun time. But of course, we are talking about spring ball. Football is back. That's a good thing. It's good to talk about football always. So we'll talk about that. Clay Helton's strong message after practice. He was pretty authoritative, which I thought was pretty interesting coming from a nice guy, Mr. Clay Helton.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk about USC finally confirmed their new strength and conditioning coach, Aaron Asmus. He was here beforehand at USC. And then we'll take your questions and calls, all that good stuff. We've made it. We're live. We have Alicia on the show. We're going.
She made it all the way down from the valley.
I know. Big props to her for coming out.
It was a trek. I'm not going to lie.
In the rain.
The 405 is not my friend.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. We appreciate you. So this is a lot of new stuff today, like Keely was saying. So we're doing we used the new phone system last week. We didn't get a whole bunch of calls, so hopefully we will. This week we can have people on hold, so the system's a lot better. Grayson, like Keely said, in the other room, ready to take your calls. 512-4-TUNNEL. Make sure you're jumping in there. We'll try to get your questions on Periscope. I got it here, but on YouTube and Facebook, we have a new system where we can put both of those up on the screen now. So if you have a YouTube question, Keely can actually put up there. We can see your avatar and all that kind of stuff too. So if it works, if it doesn't work, then sorry, but I think it'll work.
Fingers crossed. We're working it out.
Yeah.
So day one, not much you can make a whole observation from just because it's day one. You don't want to go too far the other way. But what were your guys' first impressions of spring ball?
You want to start, Alicia? There we go.
I can start.
Yeah.
Take all the big relevant ones. I think having a day now to digest it, I think the biggest thing I'm coming away with is the way the defense looks different in terms of where guys are. I sort of had a sense that Jordan Iosefa would get a chance at middle linebacker, but not necessarily from the perspective of, well, Connor Murphy's going to be in that spot.
Right.
Or, Christian Rector definitely going to be in one of the outside linebacker spots. Drake Jackson also being in one of those outside linebacker spots. So it's just that front looks different than it did in the past.
It looked more like a 4-3.
Exactly.
Anything.
I mean, it basically looks like they're running. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a 4-3 this year as a result, because I can see a world where they want John Houston and Palaie and Ateote and Jordan Iosefa on the field at the same time.
Yeah. Maybe a 4-2-5, because I guess they did have a lot of nickel in there. So it was more, the 4 down linemen, it looked like 4 down linemen.
I mean, if they have 5 defensive backs to use, then they can do that. But that's the other big takeaway from the first day is, do they have 5 defensive backs? They have 6, I think, 7 total. I'm not exaggerating that. They literally have 7 scholarship defensive backs to work with for 5 positions. So that's kind of a big deal.
I remember turning to you in practice and going, is that it? Is that all the guys they have? It's basically one first-team rep is all the guys they have.
Yeah. Not having C.J. Pollard out there yesterday was a little bit, that would have been nice to get him working in there. I mean, Chase Williams, I thought, looked pretty good, playing a lot of nickel, and Brent Allen, I think, he was maybe grabbing a little bit when he was doing stuff, but he looked like a, kind of guy that's been around for a while. It's not like he comes in as a true, didn't look like coming in as a true freshman. I guess the problem is Isaiah Polomau and Talanoa Hufanga, I think, are going to be great, but they're not going to really have contact, right? So we're going to see them these days without pads. When there's pads on, are they going to be gone?
And that's going to be a problem because, like I said, they don't have anybody else behind them. If C.J. Pollard, who obviously wasn't there on Tuesday, if he's not back, then we're going to be seeing a lot of Jordan McMillan, essentially. Like, I don't know what else they could do unless they decide to move Brent Allen back over to safety, which is what he's listed at in the spring prospectus. But then you're running with Isaac Taylor-Stewart and Dominic Davis and literally no one else at corner. they're a little bit stuck there. So I thought it was really telling that Helton, in the post-practice scrum, was talking about how, yeah, we might have to take some breaks to give these guys a breather. Because, I mean, I was watching, I too was impressed with Brent Allen in the sense that he didn't look at all like somebody who was new. Like, I thought he fit right in. And sure, he had, some struggles. But it's not like he had more struggles than Isaac Taylor-Stewart did at any point in the practice. But I was noting to myself that how many reps did he take? I mean, it was just he basically never came out. So, these guys are going to be run ragged, which I suppose if you want to put a silver lining on it, like conditioning for them is going to be really excellent.
Yeah.
But it's a concern.
They should be in shape. And I think, you saw I think there's a lot more depth in the front seven, moving Liam Jimmons over because they had a lot of dudes there. So you could move Liam Jimmons over to the offensive side of the ball. Didn't really get to see him do much because they're far away. I didn't really notice that. It was kind of low down on the priority list. But seeing John Houston playing the middle linebacker spot doesn't look like he's a lot bigger or anything, but I talked to him for a while afterwards. He feels very comfortable. He likes calling, he made a lot of the calls when Cameron Smith was out last year. So he, kind of a natural move for him. He said he learned a couple months ago that he was going to do that. And then Palier Naotote moving from the middle where everyone thought he was going to be to playing the will. So it's a different look on the defensive side, like you were saying. And Clay Helton said he wants Clancy Pendergast to let them, make it simpler, let more guys play, and just go out there and be more aggressive. And that's what Lynn Swann said too in his comments at the Orange County the Trojan Club thing down there. So maybe we'll see it a little bit different. I mean, the offense certainly looked different, but on the defensive side, there was definitely some new wrinkles.
There were more wrinkles and more changes than I anticipated. And I've kind of gone into this offseason thinking like, well, at least the offense is going to be different. But bringing back Clancy Pendergast was a little bit of obviously a questionable move. And I was worried that it was a move that signaled, Clancy had convinced Clay that just the injuries were so bad that you can't judge the season, right? I don't think, just based on what we've seen from one day, I think that's being undercut a little bit in the sense that, well, clearly they've looked at it and made some direct and really visible changes. And I don't know if those are going to fix problems necessarily, but at this stage, when you're going into this season and the way that the offseason has played out, I'm at the point where anything that looks like they're visibly trying to do something different, I'm going to give them credit for doing something different. I will see if the results have any impact, but I will give credit where credit is due because, on Ranger Troy Radio, Michael and I did a whole podcast episode about what were the changes that we would, I think it was actually a Patreon show that we did, what were the changes that we would institute if we were in Lynn Swann's position. And it was, we went through piece by piece where we would make the changes, and it's not necessarily the easiest thing to do to come up with very tangible things that are going to get results. So if they're going to do any little change in practice, any little change in scheme, any little change in personnel, then what else can they do? There's only so much that they can do, and I think it's important to acknowledge where they're not screwing up because we've spent so much time pointing out where they've screwed up.
Yeah, I think they did make a lot of changes. And it starts with Clay Helton. We're going to not see him as much. They're only going to make him available on Saturdays now. He was available yesterday. So they're changing that up a little bit. That's kind of weird for me because that's something I think he does pretty well. He addresses the media well. But just watching him in practice kind of going around, and he was raising his voice more. He was yelling, he would instantly try to correct things when someone they're not waiting to the film. So I think they've made some changes. It sounds like they've heard some of the criticism, and he's making some sort of an effort to do things at least a little bit differently and try to address problems right away on the practice field as opposed to we'll fix that in a meeting 2 days from now.
Right. And on the media thing, like obviously from our perspective, we want access to him every practice because he gives us injury updates and all sorts of things. So that's an advantage to us. But I actually think it's really smart of them to take him away from the media. I think there's oversaturation of Clay Helton quotes. And I think Clay Helton
Interesting. That's an interesting take.
Right? Because he says, I got to the point where I was rolling my eyes at everything he was saying because he couldn't say things differently. He couldn't say anything right because everything he said was in the context of 5 and 7, and so you could wrap it in negativity.
If you say situational mastery, then you're just going to get all kinds of negative comments.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, you guys tweet the scrums after practice. I tweet the scrums after practice. What kind of comments do you get the whole time? Every single comment is, Helton, this, that. So, part of me thinks
Yeah. Like
taking
help
him out
save
of
the baby from a burning building. Oh, he's terrible.
I mean,
Yeah.
to give you an example, yesterday Clay Helton did a really nice thing and started the practice by giving his condolences to Gary Paskowitz and him passing away. And I said, classy move by Helton. And in my mentions, it was like, we never doubted that he was classy. He's just not a good coach. And I'm like, can you guys take a chill pill for 2 seconds? Like, this is about a more serious matter. So, yes, I agree.
Right. So in that sense, I don't think that's the worst move that they could make as far as I don't think fans want to hear from Clay Helton. And like I said, Clay Helton can't fix this by talking. I thought his comments on Tuesday were all really on point, but because they were addressing in a tangible ways, the ways that they're going to fix the priorities that he talked about. But on Thursday, if he comes out and says the same thing, it's just going to start ringing hollow, and it's not going to do anybody any good.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
Were your mentions pretty negative? For the most part, mine were better than they were.
Keely, we tweet about random walk-on doing something good, and we get Helton is terrible. Like,
wow.
We mention anything that's about the program, and the mentions are bad. So
True.
There's no escaping it.
That's true. Well,
he definitely had a different feel. Like, I think he was trying to take charge at that press conference and talk about, we're going to leave 2000. He talked a lot about 2018, but said we're going to leave it behind. And I feel like, he knows that he's on some sort of hot seat there, and I think he knows they have to make some different moves. He didn't make all I don't think he made all the right moves in the offseason, but he made some good ones. And I think he's made some good ones, just watching the first day of practice. So we'll see if it kind of bears any fruit. Sometimes you get out there a little bit, but then you retreat and go back to your comfort zone. I think he went out there. Does he stay out there and let Graham Harrell? We'll talk about the offense in a second. Let him run half of the practice without a script. He likes to have here's our plan. This is what we're going to do. For Graham Harrell to go there and like being up on Dado Field and making play calls and stuff from there, like you're practicing for a game during 7-on-7, 11-on-11. I thought that was great. It was impromptu, where normally they would like, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, sort of like checking boxes as opposed to, hey, well, this is how we're going to get better. So I feel like that's a good improvement. Does he feel a little uncomfortable later and try to rein it back in? That would be a problem.
Well, and that's my question on the defense, too, because Clancy Bender asked to make changes, to put in bigger fronts, to simplify, and we can see the effects of that on day one. What is this going to look like on, April 6th when there's a couple injuries and they fall back into, well, I guess we got to move Jordan SF over back to Sam because we don't have anyone else to play there and we don't trust Connor Murphy to be out there. Like, there's a lot of put up or shut up kind of stuff, and I think you're absolutely right to point out. We give them credit when they put things out there, but the tendency to fall back into what you've been doing before is a very strong one. It's just human nature, and that's going to be the thing that they're going to have to resist. But that's why the offseason stretches on until fall, and then we actually see the results.
Yeah, Connor Murphy was one of the weirdest ones because I think we talked about this on the show last week. Someone asked like on YouTube or something like, "What's up with Connor Murphy?" Like, I don't know. There's probably nothing. And he's like prominent player out there. It's like, all right, so that was someone new.
Yeah, the prominent example of that is mock game week. As far as what we were talking about earlier, mock game week looked great. And it was an encouraging sign. And then we never saw that level of intensity again, arguably for the rest of the season in practice.
Yeah.
So it's, they can show that they do good things. The real test is whether they stick with it and what happens going forward. We have people coming in late. Just so you know, special guest Alicia de Artola on the show. Do you want to give us a little rundown about Raina Troy? What do you do on Raina Troy? Your whole
They
spiel?
do a great job. They're, awesome podcast for sure. You want to check it out. Production value is very high. They do a really good job. They have over 300 episodes and stuff now. So, but go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned that, that's crazy. It's way more than 300 because we have a stupid numbering system where we only number the actual episodes, but then we have like midweek mailbags and CarCast. So it's probably like 600 at this point. But yeah, so Raina Troy, we have RainaTroy.com, which is part of the fan-sided network of sites. So I basically run the show over there and write, everything analysis and practice updates and basically anything that comes to mind. On the podcast, we have Raina Troy Radio, and I have my co-host, Michael Castillo, the audio czar, who makes sure the production value on all of that is up to snuff. So it's been now it's crazy to me how long we've been doing this. It just feels so short the time we've been doing it, but then you think back on 300 plus official episodes and you realize wow, like I came on, I onboarded around like episode 15 or something like that. So it's been a whole thing. But yeah, it's been really, really fun. We've had really good feedback. We have a Patreon now, so if anyone's listening and wants to support the show and help us do more than just the main episodes that we do, we have patreon.com/reignoftroy for anybody who's interested in a lot of bonus content. Like the big thing for spring camp is after every practice, I jump on and do 20 minutes, half an hour of deep diving into what happened at practice. And sometimes it's a rant, and sometimes it's going through very specifically each one-on-one rep between wide receivers and corners. We got some feedback from somebody who talked about the nerding out with it. So if that's your thing, then that's Reign of Troy.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you're definitely getting some love in the comments. People love your rants and whatnot. So
yeah,
they're glad we have you on.
Keely's been, if you guys remember last April Fools, me and Keely played Michael and Alicia, and they
I
did
a horrible job trying to play you.
No, you did a wonderful
Keely's
job.
been a frequent guest on the Reign of Troy podcast. They haven't asked me, but whatever. That's cool.
We're intimidated by you, Ryan.
Ryan, not worthy.
We are not worthy.
Well, I'm glad you could come on. That was cool. Keely wanted me to be outnumbered in here, so we're Keely got it. We at least have Grace in the other room, so it's kind of tough.
It happens occasionally.
It does.
Yeah, it's good.
So Graham Harrell, you could argue he's the man of the spring. I thought it was really interesting that he, halfway through practice, went onto the baseball field up on Dado Field, put a headset on. We usually see that kind of 2 weeks into practice once they go to scrimmage practices, but we saw that on day one. And as Ryan mentioned, he did unscripted practicing his play calling. What did you guys think of Graham Harrell, that whole situation, and what the offense looked like under this new scheme?
Yeah, I thought that was cool. I think I pointed that out to you, Keely, right? I'm like, look,
no, Ryan, I pointed it out to you. He stole it and tweeted it.
I'm just impressed that you guys could find Graham Harrell on the field, because there are so many nondescript guys wearing white baseball caps on that field.
And then John David Baker,
shaved.
and John David Baker's right next to him, and there's similar, but different outfits and stuff, but with the cap. And
I genuinely couldn't keep track, so I'm impressed you guys noticed. I personally didn't.
I thought that was great. I mean, there was a game-like sort of atmosphere with having the referees out there, having him go up, and I think before, and Dan Weber gets on this a lot, where you're practicing plays, like we have to run this play, we have to run this. This felt like you were practicing football. You're like, this is what we want to do, and here's how it's going to work, and I'm going to call this down, and you're not seeing those cards on the side. I think I forget. I asked one of the players about that. They're like, yeah, those are gone. It's like way easier to get plays in instead of like 7 or 8 words. It's like 3 words to do a play. So it's much simpler. I know it's a new system for these guys. I think they got a taste of it when they got the playbook from Cliff Kingsbury. That probably helped them, but to be able to, hit the guy coming in a few weeks ago and now them being able to run things looking pretty smooth, I think that's a good sign. I think you can make football too complicated sometimes, especially in college when you got these guys 20 hours a week. I love the simplicity. I think it's going to be, it's going to be a well-run offense, and I don't think you can say that for the last few years.
No, certainly not. I agree totally with everything that you said. I thought one of the more interesting things that was said after practice was Michael Pittman talking about, what is the simplicity of the air raid or whatever, and he was saying that it's just much freer and more open in terms of what they're asked to do. Like, they're not told to have specific splits, and they're not told to go to specific depths. They're basically just told as wide receivers, go get open. Go, find room, get open, catch ball. And I know that, I think that could, if you're too blasé about that could bite you in the butt. But at the same time, it almost feels like, and this was the other thing that Michael Pittman talked about when Graham Harrell first addressed the team. He gave this big rah-rah speech, apparently, and he basically said, we are going to be better than everybody else because we are better than everybody else. And you sort of get the feeling that Graham Harrell, coming from North Texas, he had that line about, these guys are very different than what I'm used to.
Sure.
Graham Harrell maybe is a fresh pair of eyes, appreciating just how talented USC is.
True.
And how much it can be just you don't need to complicate it. Just let Michael Pittman find a way to get open and then get him the ball. And it can be that simple pitch and catch situation if you let it be. But I don't know. That, like I said, you got to find a nice little balance there. And that's going to be the thing that we're going to have to keep track of is the balance between, free ball and everything, and also everyone still being on the same page and knowing exactly what they're supposed to do and when.
Yeah. You walk into that room and go, oh, that Devin Williams guy, is he the number 1 guy? No, he's 4 or 5. What? How is that possible? So I think it's a good point. And I think we've heard the fans say that. We've said it like, look, this is a really talented team. They shouldn't have been 5-7. They shouldn't have been whatever. But now they're saying, I think Clay Helton's saying that, like, hey, we're as talented or more talented than everyone on our schedule. So it's sort of like taking account of, like, we shouldn't be losing these games. And, I would like them to get a little bit away from, he mentioned it again, like, losing by 2 points, losing. And it's like, well, you had a lot more talent than the team that you lost to. And, yeah, you lost close, but that team wasn't that good, and you lost. So I think he backed away from a little bit by saying we are the most talented team. So if you go out and you lose 2 of your first 4 games or something, like, you're more talented than those teams. You shouldn't have lost those games.
Right, well, that's the this is bad Clay Helton. The fallacy of, if we just didn't have those penalties, then we would have won 3 or 4 more games. And it's like, well, yeah, you would have won 3 or 4 more games, but you'd still have the core problems that exist in this program. So, that's bad Helton. That's why Helton needs to step away from talking to the media. But, I guess there's also, obviously you want to, what were they, the 123rd in penalties last year? So you do need to address those things. But
penalties were a problem, turnovers, all
they
that
were
stuff.
120. I just looked these numbers up. They were 120th in turnover margin, which is real bad.
Yeah, they weren't as good as sacks. Like, they were really good the year before. So there's a lot of problems. Graham Harrell's not going to fix them all, but it's going to fix a bunch of them.
He can try. Okay, so I'm going to try something new. I'm going to try and put a YouTube question up. Oh, I think it worked. We have a YouTube question from Jasper Smith. He says, of the early enrollees, who stood out yesterday?
Jasper, thanks for
inaugural YouTube comment.
It should be Jasper because he's like the, he does.
But we don't have favorites here. We got to make sure. The peanut gallery
it's
of
up
YouTube.
on the screen now. This is the first time we've done that. The first time we have YouTube up there. Hopefully it continues to work.
Early enrollees, guys.
I mean, just the early enrollees in general stood out. Like, looking at Drake Jackson when you saw, like, number 99, like, oh, wait, wow, that's Drake Jackson. That guy looks pretty good. Like, Brent Allen, we talked about him. Even Kevon Slovis, like, I thought he looked like a, potential college quarterback. I think there was some good stuff there. Who's else?
To me, Jude Wolfe looked
Jude Wolfe
at
looked
home.
good.
Jude Wolfe looks like a college tight end.
Yep.
Like, I saw him walk up the tunnel or up the ramp, whatever thing that the All-American walk, whatever you want to call that thing, and I just looked at him and went, that dude's like full-grown tight end.
Had you
already.
seen him before that?
I had never seen him in person. No.
Yeah.
So yeah.
He's a big guy.
Yeah.
And wearing 82, it's like,
it's a good
it kind of
number.
looks like, it kind of
He
looked like
Tyler Petit a little bit.
Yeah.
Sometimes they do that. They're like, oh, that guy looks,
A little bit.
Yeah, like Drake Jackson, like, oh, Alwale Patiku, like, him. But, I mean, he's bigger, but that guy's an impressive looking dude, too, so.
You guys mentioned this, but Brent Allen, just the fact that he got so many reps for his first practice as a Trojan, it was just insane to me. I think I told you it was like his second year there or third year there, where he's the regular guy getting those reps that he knows about, but this is his first practice. That to me was a little mind blowing.
Yeah, I came away the most impressed with him, and part of it is just because of the number of he was right in front of us for a large portion of practice, so we actually got to see him.
Great point.
That helps. But I also just came away thinking, like, he looks like he has something sort of instinctual there that maybe I haven't seen from other cornerbacks at USC, where I felt like naturally he was getting his head around to find the ball. And it's that little detail that you realize, like, well, did I see Greg Johnson do that at any point last year? Like, no, I don't think so. So, just those little things where maybe that's what helps him. Obviously, he's still a little raw. You got, I think, a couple pass interference calls against him with the referees that were there. But he looked like he was taking coaching well, and he looked like he fit in. Not just physically, but just in terms of the way that he was carrying himself and the way that he was processing the 1,000 reps that they gave him.
Yeah, Ben Griffith too. Like Griffith.
There's no way to say that without a list.
No, it
yeah,
is,
Griffith.
Yeah.
Griffiths.
He was like. He's got I mean, he was the only punter out there. They did more special teams, and we were talking about this, and we talked with Dan. Like, they didn't do as much like full team special teams last spring, which I thought was a positive sign. They did more of it this time. They did field goals and things like that. Chase McGrath's still not out there, but Griffith was. He was booming punts. He did a lot of the coffin corner stuff where he was making it, go backwards, and he looks like legit. So he'll be. Probably the most impact, the incoming freshman. He might be
instant starter.
Freshman, quote unquote, for a 27-year-old.
Yeah. He's got 4 years to play for. I don't know how that works. Why he wouldn't? Because I guess he went to college for a little bit, but he's like use his red shirt, so he's 4 years to play for.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I asked him about that because I was like, he's actually a red shirt freshman, so he's 27 years old. I think he might have turned 28 like before the season or start of the season, but he played 7 or 8 years as an Australian rules football guy. Had some concussion things and went to that camp, whatever that thing is down there for the Aussie punters and stuff, and he looks like a legit dude.
I'm just glad there's still a player older than me. It was a weird thing when I started getting older than them. It was a little weird.
He's wearing number 24 too. Normally they all wear like the same like couple of numbers, so he's got a little bit different.
Differentiating.
Yeah.
Keely, it's fun when you get older than the players because then you can actually start calling them kids and
No.
not feel like an idiot for it.
No.
Like I was calling them kids when I was 17 and talking about the team. Now I can talk about it and they actually are kids.
I guess so. James Campos on YouTube says, Alicia, you love every tight end. Don't jinx them.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I personally apologize for Daniel Amadabebe. I did that to him, and
He didn't show up yesterday.
I was a little bummed.
thought he was
that
gonna
wasn't
come.
be there.
Yeah, it was a little odd. We have a question on Facebook from David Gold. He says, is Velus Jones staying or leaving? Any word on that situation?
Well, Michael Pittman tried to make it sound like he could potentially come back, but I am not putting any stock in that.
Yeah, he's in the transfer portal. So I think Michael Pittman was saying, because we have access to, we put it up there, and he's inserted himself in the transfer portal. So he could withdraw. I mean, he certainly could. We haven't seen that yet. I checked earlier today, and I didn't see that happen. But I think Michael Pitt was like, he's not officially in there. Like, well, you're in there. You're in there. It's like,
But Clay Helton's comments, he sounded like, I'll keep you updated, like if anything happens, but they're in the portal. Right. So, and Pittman alluded to that Velus is undecided. Like, he's still trying to make a decision. And I had heard that there's just family issues there. It's not like he's upset at the team and wants to leave, where if that's the case, you'd enter yourself in the portal and then you're kind of done. So I feel like maybe this is an evolving situation, but it's always kind of weird with USC and when things kind of change in that sense.
Yeah, for him and Greg Johnson to be still on the roster when they entered the portal on Friday, I believe it was. It could be like, well, did they already created the media guide or something?
That was my thought, is that you've already printed like the prospective. Like,
and they might come back. Like the other ones you don't think are coming back. Maybe that's why. But then Keyshawn Young is not in the transfer portal still. At least I checked earlier today. And he was listed as a squadsman lost, and he showed up. We were talking in practice. I'm like, hey, there's Keyshawn Young. So he was over in where like the parents and the fans go, just kind of hanging out I think he was only there for a little while, like sort of watching. So we didn't really get an update. It was hard talking to Clay Helton because we had so many TV cameras and stuff there that you were getting a lot of like big picture stuff, and we usually want to ask about injuries and all these kind of things. Where is this player? Why isn't this guy around? So we didn't get to a lot of that stuff, and he's not going to talk tomorrow, Thursday. So we'll have to get that on Saturday. Well, I won't because I won't be here, but you will.
I will. Yeah, I'll take it upon myself to ask.
You guys are they're good. Both these women are very good at the tweeting during practice, like being able to like. When Clay just kind of runs through the injuries and stuff, I'll just I'll kind of retweet them as opposed to because like remembering like 5 injuries, like, this guy has a calf, this guy has a hamstring. And I'm like, that's just too much for me to remember, and then type it all out. Their little thumbs are going flying. So.
Raina Troy is always my backup. Sometimes
that's what I was going to say about you and Shotgun. It's like, I know I have a safety net because if I miss one of them, I can always retweet one of you two.
Yeah, I'm like, I missed a couple names. Let's see if Raina Troy got it. I'm like, that's a retweet right there.
between like the web of all of us, we pretty much get it covered. So.
Yeah.
That's true.
This is behind the scenes going on.
Behind the curtain. Just a reminder, we have a phone line open.
Yeah, give us a call.
512-4-TUNNEL. If you have a question specifically for Alicia, you can call in and ask her, or you can comment below your questions, and I'll make sure to ask her for you. Also, just questions about how yesterday went as well. Anything else stand out to you guys? Anything noticeable while I pull up some more questions over here?
I would think just the referee stuff was pretty different. And the fact that Clay Helton was like, I mean, he wants to, work on the penalties, the discipline, turnovers, all that kind of stuff. But having someone make a change on the field, like if you get a penalty, it's like, hey, everyone's doing push-ups. Like Michael Pittman ended practice. I think he ended practice with it, like catching a touchdown, spiked the ball. He wasn't too happy that he got flagged for it, but you would get a flag in a game. So I thought that was a different feel. And just Clay Helton's demeanor was different to me. I felt like he was trying. It was almost like you were trying to be more of a coach, like yelling, like where maybe you don't see that as his personality, but he was like screaming at guys sometimes, not like in a bad way, but just in a I'm a coach. I'm boisterous, and I'm going to be out here and telling you guys what to do.
Well, he had that line about something about like setting a standard and making sure that the players knew that was going to be the standard. And maybe it's a situation where they just got too lax and they were accepting too many little things that were sliding by, and so maybe now they got to be hard asses about it. That might be it. Personally, the referee thing is the number one thing that I point to as like, okay, if you want to point to Clay Helton not just talking about it but being about it, like when he talked all last season about penalties, I was rolling my eyes about fundamentals and technique in January because I heard fundamentals and technique September, October, November. Like, you can't say those words and not have me roll my eyes. Same thing with the discipline and the penalties. Well, at the very least now when he says something about discipline and penalties, I can look at it and say, well, you know what? He's bringing in refs for all 15 practices. Yeah. You got to go nuclear on it sometimes, and that's the way to do it, and you're going to annoy the players. But if you annoy them into not making those critical errors, then success.
Yeah, what was it? Was it the Arizona game? Was it 21 penalties or what was it?
Oh, man. That black hole of time in the fourth quarter, that was just awful.
That was
yes.
So there was that, and his solution afterwards was they fixed it in a meeting.
There were three categories.
And there were three categories of penalties, and you're like, you got so many, you got to categorize them. Like, it just didn't seem to be the right way to go. So I agree with you. Like, you know what? We're not going to do that again. We're not going to categorize penalties and fix it in a meeting. We're going to, when it happens on the field, we're going to address it then. So
I liked having the real time feedback for especially DBs, because last year and actually years before, I would watch DBs get away with things that they wouldn't get away with in games. And what's the point of practicing if you're going to practice it wrong and practice it in ways that are going to hurt your team come Saturday? So for me, it was really interesting to see guys that normally kind of got away with a little bit of a hold, a little bit of a jersey tug, get that immediate correction, that feedback. And so you're actually putting good habits into place in practice now.
Right. And Brent Allen, that was one of the moments that stood out to me in practice, is Brent Allen got popped for tugging on, I don't know if it was Michael Pittman or Devin Williams, one of the two. And Greg Burns, the new DB's coach, comes over and asks the referee to come over, and they stand together with Brent Allen, and he asked him, well, what was it that triggered it? And then the ref said whatever. And so then you see right there on the field, Greg Burns coaching Brent Allen. Listen, you can have your hand on his shoulder. That's fine. You can even get a little grip of it. That's fine. It's when you tug it down is when he's going to call. There you go. Real feedback in the moment. And, Britton Allen needs to then internalize that and figure himself out, but at least it's there.
Yeah.
We got a Periscope question.
Sure, go for it.
On to right in CA, any chance other players could transfer in? So there's 10 players in the transfer portal all going out. USC bringing with John Jackson. We didn't get confirmation he's on scholarship, but I assume he is. I think USC could only transfer one guy in, like from our scholarship count. But have you heard anything about that? Or
just guesses of they could use a DB, they could use a wide receiver, they could use a running back, they could use an offensive lineman.
Yeah.
I was looking at who is it? What's his name? Parker Braun, the kid coming out of Georgia Tech, and he's going to Texas, which.
He announced?
Yeah, he announced he's going to Texas, so that doesn't surprise me at all. I didn't necessarily see that as a very super viable option, but if USC, the problem I see with USC and transfers in is the level of player that you would need to transfer in to come in straight ahead of the guys you already have. I don't know that those guys are out there. Like, I don't know that there's a CVT out there that could just come straight in and know, like, no, this guy's going to compete right away. It's the problem with being as talented as USC is. That means they have talent in all. Like, so if you're going to bring in a running back, are you really going to bring in a running back when you have Stephen Carr and Vime Alapea and you like Marquise Stepp and you feeling pretty good about those three guys? Like, are you going to actually do that? Now USC could use the depth at wide receiver, but what wide receiver is going to come to USC looking for playing time as a grad transfer when USC can put out a 4 wide receiver set that includes Tyler Vaughns, Michael Pittman, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Devin Williams?
Yeah.
Like, the chances there are not necessarily gold-plated or anything like that. So I think I think it's harder. This is where my soccer fandom helps me.
Because I don't think we mentioned soccer on the show ever.
Because I'm so used to the transfer window in soccer, and the dealing with the squad dynamics of, well, if you need to convince somebody to join you, knowing that it's going to be hard to convince somebody to come in and play and be on your bench, like, and be a bench contributor. They can contribute, but most of the guys, when they're making moves, are looking to be starters.
Yeah.
What starting positions can USC seriously offer, or would USC be willing to seriously offer? Because, like, I would have offered Parker Braun that starting right guard position in a heartbeat, but is USC really going to go out there and say, like, Andrew Voorhees isn't cutting it for us?
That'd be tough. I mean,
Yeah.
one of the safeties, it depends, on injuries and stuff. Like, if they came in now, they would be obviously playing quite
Yeah.
a bit. The math doesn't work out. I think we talked about this on our podcast with Dan Weber and Keely when we were in here. And I don't know if we did. We talked about, but so USC's had 10 people transfer out.
Oh, yeah, we did
can
talk
really
about
only bring in like one. And there's like 2,000 people in this transfer portal. I think they're going to have to change. The NCAA is going to have to change some of the rules because there's a lot of people out there that aren't going to be able to find Division I homes just because, how many spots do people have left? It's like there's a lot of people leaving, but there's not necessarily a lot of places to land. So I think you might see a lot of people coming back. We'll see. I mean, this is all kind of uncharted territory. But maybe some of those people that want to transfer out end up returning because, and schools can cut them at that point too. So I think you might have to wait till the end of the semester. I don't know exactly how it works, but if you go in the transfer portal, then the school is allowed to, disassociate themselves. So you might not have a home to go back to too. So I think they're going to have to make some tweaks to this transfer portal. I'm all for giving players an opportunity to go somewhere, but this might be, this might be a little too much, not just because players are doing things and then there's really no place for them to go. They want to transfer someplace, but they didn't really have any options, so now they're kind of screwed.
Yeah, I mean, you got to work out the kinks on this because, like you said, I know I saw somebody tweet that the other day that there are more players in the transfer portals than scholarships available in total in Division I. So that's a problem.
Yeah. Like if you're Justin Fields or something, or you're like, yes, you're going to find a home. But if you're, if you're Keyshawn Young, do you find a home? I don't know. And it might be to go, it might be go JC for a while. It might be go to another, Division II or something. I mean, whatever. But there's not a lot of landing spots, and there's a lot of dudes in the portal.
So we have a live caller, I believe. Let me try
We love the live callers.
out. We have Jared from Tucson on the line. Jared, are you there?
It's actually Gerald.
Oh, sorry, Gerald. My bad.
That's okay.
How you doing?
How you guys doing? Doing well. Just having a good time listening to you guys over here.
Well, thanks for calling in. What's your question?
First of all, just want to say that's pretty cool that when they have you on hold, you can listen to you guys still.
Oh, cool.
I was kind of worried about logging off of or not listening to you guys and being on hold, but I think that's pretty cool.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, thank you. Encouraging other people to call in.
Definitely. So my question is, did you guys see any kind of vocal leaders out there on the field? And any seniors being more vocal, or anybody taking more of a leadership role?
Yeah, that's a good question, Gerald. Thanks for the call. So I talked to John Houston a little bit yesterday. He's not the most vocal guy in the world. Like if you talk to him, he's pretty quiet. It's funny. I talked to his dad after practice for a little while. He's pretty boisterous and stuff. And John's a little more subdued, but he definitely talked about wanting to be in that leadership role, wanting to make a lot of those calls. And it's been weird though. The last few years, there's not been as many vocal guys. Like Chris Hawkins was probably one of the most vocal guys. We saw Zach Banner, a couple years back. Chris Hawkins is still
vocal.
out there. Yeah, that's to go from that to John Houston. It's a little different. But I think he's going to be. He's one of the only seniors on. There's only 8 seniors on the team, so there's not that many opportunities. Was there anyone you knew?
Well, I talked to Jordan Isefa after practice, and he was saying a lot of the same things where he is trying to take it on himself to be more of a leader. But again, he's not a guy that I necessarily think of as boisterous or loud. And he was more talking about guys coming to him and asking him advice and him being able to give it and how that was kind of cool. But this is going to be, I mean, every year, I think that the choice of captain says a lot about the team. Like that last year, or that the last 2 years, USC has only had one offensive captain each year.
Yeah.
And we couldn't even, going in, I wouldn't have even necessarily been able to predict right away who those captains would be. I think that says a lot about the team. And this year, trying to think of who the captains will be, I am throwing out a big old net of I'm not certain. And
No.
I don't know that that's something that we were going to be able to tell from day one of camp. I think this is the kind of thing where by the end of camp, you want to be able to sit there and say, well, no, this is the guy who's really stepping up. But that's what camp, I mean, that's one of the advantages of camp is the ability for maybe a guy coming out of nowhere to really take the reins and establish himself as one of those guys. It's still early yet.
Yeah, I think the only senior on offense is Michael Pittman, right? I think he's the only one. No, he definitely. I think he wants to be in sort of a leadership role. I think Tyler Vaughn's too. He's he's been around as long as
guy,
Michael.
though.
Yeah, they're both not. But I feel like those guys can be more behind the scenes kind of leaders, and I think a lot of people are going to look up to them. Not that there's a lot, the young receivers and stuff. I feel like it's going to be a lot more internal. But Gerald, as far as like the stand up on a chair guy, like yelling and screaming, I'm not sure. I don't see a lot of that.
I
kind of feel like vocal leaders. You don't really develop them. It's kind of natural to them. It's kind of when they get recruited from the beginning, they're just vocal from the beginning, and I just don't see that with the new recruits coming in. Most of them are just kind of quiet. So from your experience, do you guys see them develop into vocal leaders, or do they usually come in as vocal leaders?
No, I think you're right. I think you're right on that. That's sort of a thing you have. Like if you're, you can learn. Like if you had a job, like a sales job or something, and you had to get up in front of people and give a demonstration, and you don't feel great about public speaking, you can take a few classes and you can get better at it. But there's a natural, I think, ability there, and it's you want that kind of be rooted in the players. I thought Sam Darnold was a very good leader on the team, but he wasn't a stand up on the chair, and table guy and kind of yelling at everybody. So. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's just the way that the guys they've recruited, but there's been kind of a lack of that. We'll see, with the Chris Hawkins kind of helping out, I think he can kind of, maybe coach some of that into some other guys. We'll see, because he was definitely one of the better talkers. Jared, where are you from?
Tucson, Arizona.
Tucson. Oh, okay, I didn't catch that. Nice.
You mentioned Chris Hawkins, right? Well, first off, Gerald, thank you so much
Thanks for the call, bud.
calling in.
Thank you, guys.
Oh, sorry, I muted him too early. You mentioned Chris Hawkins. I actually turned to Alicia during practice, and I was like, okay, that's Greg Burns. Who's the guy standing next to Greg? I was like, is that like some consultant? I was like, who is that? Because Chris Hawkins just had such a professional vibe to him, and he was coaching from day one. It looked like a perfect fit for him. It was pretty interesting.
He fit right in, and like I was, in that conversation, I'm zooming in on my camera lens. I'm going, wait. Is that no? That's Chris Hawkins. He was wearing a hat and couldn't go. It's not how you normally see him, but he fit right in. He was over there. I mean, basically they have him coaching the safeties. Like Greg Burns was doing the corners, and Hawkins was running the show with the safeties, and he looked just natural. Which I mean, all of us could have attested to that. Like he was coaching material when he was at USC. He was essentially what did Clancy Pendergast called him, another coach on the field. Yeah. So that's really good. I mean, I think maybe that's where something that this team could benefit from is having a guy like Chris Hawkins back, having a guy like Michael Hutchings. Those were natural leaders that USC had on past teams. Yeah. So even if it's coming from the assistant coaching staff, then that could help boost up something. Yeah,
they were high IQ guys. We didn't get to see as much of Vianney Talamaival because he was on the other side, but he's another new graduate assistant.
He was going through reps. I could see through my camera.
Could you figure out what I was trying to decide what was going on across the field? They were doing a 2-man sled, and each offensive lineman would join Vianney. Like, you're a coach. What are you doing?
If you look at USCfootball.com, little plug right there, I put the sights and sounds of practice day one. If you're on YouTube already, you can probably see it in the recommended. You can see Vianney on the sled, and she's not wearing anything, and I was like, he's back at practice doing his Vianney thing. But that was an interesting thing that I couldn't really figure out. We'll see what they end up doing. I think it's the dynamic of that is a little bit strange because they were on the team with some of these guys. So when you're coaching and you kind of moved out, like, I'm the coach now, you got to they're like, I'm not going to listen to you. We cut class together or whatever, it's like now I think it's a little different, There was an Insta story of Porter Gustin and Michael Hutchings, and Michael Hutchings said something kind of like, okay, get in line. And he was like, I'm not listening to you. You're my teammate. So that was pretty funny. We have a YouTube question from Rich Connolly who says, who stood out the most as far as body? Anyone noticeably bigger? Oh, interesting.
I think, Keely, you pointed out Tyler Vaughn's looked a little thinner.
Yes, if opposite of Rich's question, but I thought Tyler Vaughn's looked pretty skinny, pretty thin.
Well, he tried to put on some muscle last year, and I'm wondering if maybe it didn't take. Like if.
But this looked like it was a purposeful slim down. And maybe I remember there was one guy one year who was like, "No, I just got the stomach flu and I lost like 5 pounds." Maybe it's that type of situation. I didn't get to hop into his scrum, but I just thought he looked pretty thin, wafery.
Yeah, I didn't ask.
Wafery.
Yeah.
A little wafer. So I thought John Houston would have been. He looked about the same to me, maybe a little bit bigger. I mean, from seeing Drake Jackson in high school to now, maybe it's just like wearing the uniform. But Clay Helton said he put on weight. He looked bigger to me. He looked like instead of like a 260, he looked more like a 275 kind of guy. Anyone else sort of? But
it could be just I haven't seen him in a while, but EA Nateote was already big, and I remember looking over and going like, oh, he's.
Yeah. Solomon Tulialapupu probably. Like,
yeah,
he was,
for sure.
Because we didn't get to see him practice at all because of that foot injury. And I had kind of heard that it still might be lingering a little bit. And I was like, maybe he's not going to. But he looked good.
Yeah.
So that's
He wasn't supposed to practice. That's what Jordan I-7 said, right?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
So
he wasn't supposed to practice
maybe
on Tuesday, but he didn't. He was just like, I'm going for it.
Maybe I heard correctly then. But he just he didn't listen. So that's okay.
He was out there making plays. So.
Yeah, he was batting
batting
balls
passes for
away.
days.
Yeah, like, okay. So he was in middle. He was in the middle spot, right? Yeah, along with Iosefa and John Houston. So I think those guys were there, and then you had EA moving out to the Will spot. I'm trying to think who else would. It's hard to see the offensive linemen. They were kind of far away. I think Austin Jackson wearing like the Chuma Doga number. He looked a little different to me. I don't know, like
Jalen McKenzie.
Jalen McKenzie.
Oh, was it?
Jalen McKenzie moved to 70.
Oh, so what is Austin Jackson wearing?
73 still.
Oh, okay. Well, then he looked good. All right.
That might be why he looked.
That's what it was. All
maybe
right.
why.
I didn't even get a roster yesterday. It was sort of like I'd look at Dan's every once in a while. It's weird. It used to be. Now we don't get to see in the winter workouts anymore because they've kind of stopped doing that. But we used to like see them all summer, and you know everyone's face, and the new people come in. But then you'd forget what the numbers are. Then you'd start practicing again. Like, oh crap! Now I got to remember what the numbers are and stuff. But it's not. So there's some number changes and stuff going forward.
I'm pulling up another question. We had a question from BB3 who wanted to know what the O-line lineup looked like.
Exactly what I literally guessed it would be. It's Austin Jackson and Elijah Vera Tucker, Brett Nealon, Andrew Voorhees, and Jalen McKenzie.
Yeah.
And the second team was almost. The second team: Clayton Bradley, Jacob Daniel, Justin Dedich. The surprise for me that I didn't obviously expect was they moved Liam Douglas to right guard, and they had Liam Jimmons. The Liams are messing me up.
So many Liams.
I'm speaking of names. I dread Jaden Watson and Jalen Williams arriving in the fall because But Liam Jimmons was at right tackle, so that was the two deep. It'll be interesting. I'm interested to see if they give Bernard Shermer a shot at first team reps at right tackle with Jalen McKenzie, or if
He had a knee brace on, which I thought was a little odd.
McKenzie did.
Sorry, Bernard Shermer.
Bernard Shermer, yeah.
Yeah. So, and the camera crew is always, we can't get the nitty gritty questions about like random injury updates, but I'm curious going forward what that's about.
What he's dealing with, yeah.
Well, it's going to be harder too because like then you got all the questions going to be built up to Saturday, so it might be tough to get some of those nitty gritty questions in because there might be a lot of big stuff, and if they cut it off, I thought if you only let them speak, once a week, then you'd let it go a little bit longer, but they kind of truncated it like they normally would. So okay.
Okay, I'm pulling this up right now. We have a live caller.
Nice.
Brandon from. Oh wait, no, I pulled in the wrong one. My bad. Hold on.
Do we have people on hold?
We had one person on hold.
Nice.
Brandon from Wisconsin. Hello, Brandon. Are you there?
Hi, Brandon.
Yes, I am.
Hey, Brandon.
What's up?
How's it going?
What's your question for the crew?
Just how do the Titans factor into Graham Harrell's offensive scheme?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. That's one that we didn't get to when Graham Harrell spoke, I guess a week or whatever it was, like a week ago, 9 days ago or so. But it looked like, I think they were involved. I mean, I think you're seeing like where you would think they would be more like, coming out of the slot and stuff. USC doesn't have as many receivers as you would like. You saw a bunch of walk-ons doing stuff, but I think it gave a lot of opportunities for pass catching from the tight ends and from the running backs. So.
Yeah. On the tight ends, I was a little bit surprised to see Eric Kromenhoek going, if you can call it first team reps. He was sort of getting the first shot there, which I would have thought that Josh Follow, given his skill set, really translates well to the air raid. He's a receiving tight end, and so if you wanted to stick him in the slot, like he's actually a pretty dangerous guy, especially since you don't have any slot receivers besides Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I don't think he views himself as a slot receiver, so it gets a little shaky there. But I think they're going to fit. I had this thought the other day that Clancy Pendergast always had this line about the best 11 players and sort of figuring out the formation based on that. And so he would just go by who were his best 11 and then sort of fit them in like a puzzle piece, at least in theory. I get the feeling, and this is based on nothing, there's my observations and hearing Michael Pittman and a couple other guys talk, that Graham Harrell might go with whatever the 4 best receiving options that I have are going to be the guys that are out there. And a lot of the times I think that's going to be the 4 wides that we saw at practice on Tuesday. But I think, Josh Follow or Eric Kromenhoek or Jude Wolfe could easily enter into that conversation based on what's going on with the receivers and based on what's going on with what they're doing in those inside spots. But
But if your concern is they're not going to use tight ends, I don't think that's the case. If you were look at what Washington State's doing, probably not as much, but I think with Graham Harrell, and they have some talent there, and they're kind of thin at the wide receiver spot. So I think you're going to see them integrated into the offense pretty well.
Yeah. Well, thanks for calling, Brandon. I think you called last week, so thanks for calling again.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Wisconsin, it's like an international call.
Maybe.
No, just kidding.
We have a question on YouTube from Jared. He says, Connor Murphy, is he going to play this year? So how do you guys see Connor Murphy fitting in going forward?
I'm of 2 minds on this. One mind is Connor Murphy was always more talented and had more ability than it felt like USC was getting out of him. So maybe this shift to a bigger front is the best thing that's ever happened to him as far as being at USC. So maybe this really benefits him. My other mind of this is, what was it, 3 seasons ago, Roy Hemsley ended up getting like first team reps left and right at one of the tackle spots, and you never heard from him ever again. And it was just a function of they didn't have anybody else to play there, and they were just basically waiting for somebody else to show up and take that spot. Connor Murphy is in danger of Drake Jackson being good enough to take his spot. That's going to be my big intrigue now that we've seen it, is how long does it take for Drake Jackson to get those first team reps? Connor Murphy can hold him off. I mean, it's not like the guy was totally without ability when he came out of high school, but Drake Jackson,
he looks legit.
Yeah.
So same sort of thing here. I wouldn't expected him to do very much, but he was a big part of practice. So I think that's at least a good sign. Doesn't mean you're going to see a lot come the fall, but I think that potential is there. And it was sort of like him and Wale together. It was like, oh, these 2 guys are going to be the next 2 Predators or whatever. And just, I don't know, maybe now Wale's gone, maybe it opens up for Connor Murphy. I'm not sure, but he was definitely more of an integral part of practice. They had a bigger, front going with the 4 guys, 4 guys that potentially could have their hand on the ground. So I think that's a good sign for him. We'll see how it was one practice, but if you're a Connor Murphy fan, I think the stock's going up. It looked like the stock was going up.
Absolutely an encouraging. It was not stock neutral.
Yeah, it was plug for the Family Feud podcast.
But I think he didn't look out of place at least in day one. The question I have for Connor Murphy really it comes back to last season after spring camp. I remember the narrative of Wale Batiku and Connor Murphy have finally earned the trust of Clancy Pendergast. And you didn't see it, and this is where we get to watch practice and we get to see all these things and sort of decide, oh, look at this new thing, and these are the narratives that are going to carry through. But once you've gone through a couple of these, you realize that the narratives can get a little bit false, and guys really got to carry through and follow through, which is ultimately on them, but also, if USC really is pushing this competition narrative and really is taking that to heart, then maybe that's the thing that changes for a Connor Murphy.
What did you guys feel about the depth chart being released every Friday? Do you think that helps the players who maybe aren't getting enough time, or does it not help players who don't get as many reps as the presumed starters, and thus they don't get a fair shot? How do you feel about the whole depth chart situation?
He sort of made a big deal out about that. I'm like, I didn't even realize they did one every week, so maybe that's just me not paying attention. Did you guys know that? I was like,
I figured they did. I mean,
Yeah.
It's sort of an internal thing. I think players kind of know. I mean, if you're on a team and you know you're better than the guy in front of you, it's not just being, you're just being biased. I mean, I think players know a lot of the times. So it's sort of like if you feel like if everyone felt like this guy should be starting and he wasn't, and you see him on the depth chart as third or something like that, I think the players are going to know. But I think it's nice that he's made practice matter more. Where like, hey, you have a really good week of practice. You might be the fourth string safety, but you're going to be the starter. Like you 2 interceptions.
Is there a fourth string safety?
Well, that's probably a bad example. But if you
Richard Hagestad?
Well done, maybe.
If Richard Hagestad had like 2 interceptions, like make him the first string safety in the depth chart. You're like, hey man, he balled out and he picked off 2 passes or whatever. If they do stuff like that, and it's like a depth chart that isn't going to impact what happens in the fall, then yeah, I think that's probably a good sign. But I don't know. They kind of made a big deal out of it, though. Like it was like this thing like, hey, we're going to reward you for practice.
It's a good idea in theory.
Yeah.
It's one of those ones where I wish I trusted this coaching staff a little bit more to see it in practice. Not like in practice, but like put into practice. Because like you said, like, I always assumed they had a depth chart that they were updating every week. And in theory, that depth chart that you update every week should be adjustable based on how you're performing in practice. So you can say this year we're going to take practice more seriously and reward players for playing, but then I got the little voice in the back of my head that says like, well, what was the biggest barrier to guys getting playing time on defense, at least the last 2 years? You had to earn Clancy Pendergast's trust. You had to be in his inner circle, and guys who weren't in his inner circle weren't getting playing time. So is that inner circle still gonna, it's not even a rotation question that I have, it's are they going to trust more players? Are they going to, adjust things based on actual performance or the feelings that they have about the players who are the favorites? Which, if you're reading between the lines about the depth chart and competition and all that kind of stuff, and players transferring too. It's the concept of favoritism is a problem on this roster. So, in theory, I like it, but that's the biggest one where I gotta see. Give me a tangible example of that in week 3. And we'll talk.
Yeah, I think the example you'd want to look at is, say you go last year, if Toa Lobendon was like snapping over people's heads in practice and Justin Dedich and Brett Nealon were not, he should have been third, instead of like, he's the love of my life, so he's going to be first no matter what. So if you could see that, and not saying that it would happen for the game, but like, hey, after the first 2 weeks of practice, Lobendon's third. It's like, hey, I think then it's real. But if it doesn't matter, if you're like, no, he's going to be our guy, and you don't change it, even though he's not performing as well in practice, then it's not worth. It's just words.
The way that Clay Helton talked about it, it sounded like they were already putting out depth charts internally, which makes me question, then why make it public? Like, is there a sense of they want a sense of accountability as far as going forward? Where do people lie on the depth chart so that it means more? I don't understand why make it public if you're already doing it. Maybe just to show us that there's not favoritism?
Well, okay, here's my argument for that. I totally get where you're coming from. It does feel a little bit manufactured, but at the same time, I know myself in January at one point was ranting and raving about how they need to show something. They need to tell us what's going on because people are freaking out about Cliff Kingsbury and everyone is losing their minds, and it would really help if Lynn Swann came out and said something, right? So here we are, the first week of spring camp, and they're at least saying something. Like, it's not going to solve the problem, but at least they are putting a tangible solution out in front of the competition problem.
I guess it wasn't me doubting the sincerity. It was more, what's the difference now?
Right.
Besides it's just being released on Friday. Like,
I think it is a publicity move.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you would be questioned about it. Like, hey, why is Toa Lobendon still the first string center when the other 2 guys are playing better? So you could at least ask questions about it, and you can see. And I think it helps. Like, players know. So if you make it public and it's pretty obvious, you're like, oh, okay, well, then you might get something more out of them. So it could be interesting for us. We'll see.
Yeah.
We have a YouTube question from Jasper Smith. He says, with the incoming recruiting class, who will play immediately and who will be redshirted? if we had to guess
Oh,
right now
boy.
off of one
Well,
day.
Ben Griffiths.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
playing
That's my
immediately.
easy answer.
Who would? I mean, I think a lot of the secondary guys are probably. I mean, there's dudes like the 6 guys that got added like on signing day. A few of them I think are going to redshirt.
I think you take the guys in the secondary and sort of split them down the middle. Half of them, and I don't know who belongs on which half, but half of them will redshirt and half
Yeah.
of them will play a little bit.
Brent Allen won't redshirt. I don't think he
No,
will.
I
No.
agree.
I think you'll see like the guys coming off injuries probably. End up. We saw Max Williams out there. I mean, he had a big knee brace on and stuff.
That was surprising for me.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like he was doing a lot, but I mean, my guess is he's going to redshirt. I think a Kyle Ford probably going to redshirt. Guys like that.
Trey Davis is also coming off of a knee injury. There's actually quite a few guys. Is Munir McClain technically coming off of a knee injury, or was it a knee injury that was before? So it was this past season.
Well, no, it happened during his junior season, but he was rehabbing still during his senior
Okay.
year. He didn't come back playing his senior year until halfway through the season.
Okay, yeah. So he's probably on a quicker timetable, but
Yeah.
Yeah, he might redshirt just to redshirt,
'cause,
but
yeah.
there's that. I mean, if you can play like in this offense, they're gonna,
a couple injuries and he's right in there.
Yeah.
But I think all the linebackers more or less, like Stanley
Afu?
Ta'afu?
I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I should have just gone with Stanley.
Stanley T.
Raylan Goforth, I think will redshirt. Tuasivi Nomura, I'm just gonna guess will redshirt because I think he needs to bulk up a little bit if they're gonna put him in one of those outside linebacker spots. Now that they're going bigger there.
Probably all the offensive linemen.
Oh
are
yeah, all
redshirt.
Gino and
Jason
Jason
Rodriguez
Rodriguez,
and Thule or whatever was the guy. The guy
Tillini Levi.
from Narbonne.
Yeah,
I think those guys will redshirt.
what am I missing?
I got a
Anyone
list here.
It's okay.
Yeah.
We can
I think
move on.
we're missing all of the 27
Yeah.
secondary guys that they're bringing in. I can't name them all.
So we have a question from Beck Stein on YouTube. He says, "Is the QB competition real, or is it just for show?"
Interesting. So if you were just walking up to practice yesterday, my thought was, okay, JT Daniels is the starter. Like just watching it, but they sort of went and like. I mostly saw JT Daniels throwing the ball, and I think Keely were in the same mindset. But I think Dan was saying, "Oh no, Jack Sears and Matt Fink got more." But it was sort of like JT and Slovis were together doing stuff, and then the other two guys. But I saw a lot more of JT. I don't know what you.
I saw a lot of Jack Sears because they did the one-on-ones in the red zone, and I think it was just Sears and I think maybe it was one of the walk-ons, maybe it was Slovis, but JT and Fink were over on the other field doing something with the other team. So like I don't know how they're gonna split those reps, but I'm gonna give the coaches the respect that I think Graham Harrell deserves and say that it is open because Graham Harrell will be coming at this with fresh eyes to get a look at it. But I will also say, in my mind, it's a foregone conclusion that JT Daniels is going to win the starting job because what quarterback coach has JT Daniels not totally wowed with his QB brain?
Yeah, I think his football IQ is going to help, and when we talk to Graham Harrell, I mean, just being able to decipher what's going on. He doesn't want you thinking too much, but you got to, I think he's going to, just absorb the playbook and just know what he's supposed to be doing. We'll see. Jack Sears and Matt Fink were not good last spring.
No.
I mean, that really set them back. Like, it was almost like if they didn't play in the spring, they might have had a better chance because you sort of came out of spring like, who's going to play quarterback? Basically, it's got to be JT Daniels. So, and JT looked way better than those guys in the fall. But that was running the gumbo. Do they look? Are those guys going to look better running this different offense? We'll see. But first practice, maybe they just gave JT a lot of first. I felt like he got the majority of the first team reps.
Well, I wonder if they're going to do like a rotation where
maybe tomorrow,
Sears will be
Yeah.
So we'll take a week to see.
The weird thing though is that JT Daniels was asked about it. He was like, "Did they tell you like the rotation? What are you going to do as far as competition wise?" And he was like, "I have no idea." Now JT is like almost too candid sometimes. Like I don't know if that was him just being like they didn't tell him that specific day, or is like are they going to go through spring not knowing and
You
they're
know
just
what
calling
though? If Harrell is if he's doing unscripted play calling in practice, like I wouldn't be surprised if he's just like winging it.
Yeah.
And just go,
Everyone's
you know
on
what?
their toes.
Today, yeah, to keep JT Daniels on his toes. Today, you're gonna, run with the fourth team and do whatever.
I love that because I
Sure,
feel like there was just always a play, like, here's what we're supposed to do today. Like, well, if something changes, like if you're fumbling the ball over the place, like stop, do something else. You
Right.
know? We got a quick one on Periscope from Warby Apex, I think. Will there be someone who's capable of even a threat at returner this year? What do you think, Alicia?
A kick returner or punt? I mean, I thought Tyler Vaughns was a threat at punt return last year, so I don't. I think he is, if they want him still to be there, I think that's perfectly fine. Kick return. If Velus Jones isn't going to be there, then you got to think Stephen Carr is going to get the chance, right?
Him.
Yeah.
Maybe a little Dominic Davis. Michael would like
Michael,
that.
shouts
Michael
to
would
Michael.
love that. Brent Allen was back there
He was.
taking punts at the very least. They didn't do any kickoff work though, did they? So I don't know if we saw the kickoff line, but
They did like a modified. It was a short field
Okay,
kickoff.
that-
So
yeah, okay. I did see that. I wasn't noting guys who were taking the. I think Brent Allen was one of those guys too.
yeah.
Because I just everywhere I looked, it was like,
It's like,
there's Brent Allen again.
yeah. I was surprised at how much he was just getting thrown into things,
Yeah.
specifically him.
Yeah, I don't think you need the huge plays like that. Just avoid the horrible plays. Like
Yes.
just avoid the horrible plays, and you're going to be fine.
Well, and you have
I mean, big plays are great, but just don't have the horrible plays.
yeah, you have guys who can flash. So it's not like Stephen Carr. If he gets one nice return in the season, then I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. If you're also not screwing up every other kick.
Yeah.
True.
Do we have a phone call?
No,
It sounded like we had.
Oh, we do. Wow. Sorry.
See, look
I
at
just got the text, Ryan.
Just saying.
We have.
Do I have to produce the show too, Keely? I'm just kidding.
Ryan.
I love throwing. We put all like, hey Keely, we've changed all the technology in the
I
show.
literally did a wide shot just so everyone can see that I'm staring at 3 computers right now.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, Keely,
And a
you got
cell
to do
phone.
this, do this,
Yeah,
do
and
that.
a cell phone too. Yeah.
Yeah.
4 screens. Okay.
So she's doing a lot back there.
We do have a live caller. Andy from Manhattan Beach. Hello.
Local.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing all right. Are you trying to make excuses while you were trying to ignore my call? I see.
No, that's not true. We did take your call. What's your question for the team?
No, I know. I'm just teasing. Yeah, just curious what you guys attribute, the massive transfer rate. Is it as simple and obvious as the changing culture there?
Thanks for the call, Andy. Yeah, I mean, I think you're seeing there's a lot of schools that have a bunch of dudes in the transfer portal. It's not just USC, but with the 5-7 season, I think Lynn Swann talked about stability. There's not been a lot of stability there. There's been the culture. I know Clay Helton's trying to change the culture, but just the way it was set up, there's just going to be a lot of people that their better option is to transfer out. So I think if the program was more stable and they had a better record last year, you wouldn't see as much as going on. We've seen other like Penn State. I think they had a bunch. There's other.
Penn State has. I think Michael was telling me they have 19 guys
Oh my
in
God,
the
like a
transfer
lot of
portal.
dudes.
Wow.
UCLA, like I got a text from David Woods, he was on Periscope earlier. I don't know if he is. He texted me, and he was like, "Hey, what was USC's low point as far as scholarships back in the sanction time?" And they were like low 70s, right, or something. It never like Lane Kiffin had a pretty good plan as far as putting all that stuff in place, and UCLA right now has 70. So it's like. That's kind of crazy. Like there's no sanctions or anything.
Yeah.
So it's not that it's exclusive to USC, but with all the weird stuff that's happened, like it's kind of the perfect storm. This is the perfect time if you're unhappy with what's going on, you can just go into the transfer portal, and we saw that happen quite a bit. Now some of them were put in there by USC. It wasn't their choice. So there might be more. There might be more after the spring. We don't know.
Yeah, I don't think there's one good answer for all of the transfers because I think there are so many different examples of, with one this might be a family issue, and with one this might be a depth chart issue, and with one this might be just not good enough kind of issue. So it's hard to get a read on it. But if I was gonna pin it down to one thing that I could kind of wrap as many of them in as possible, I'd have to go with if it's anything, it's favoritism. It's the sense of not trusting that if you return for another season, you will get a fair shot at increasing your lot in terms of the participation in the team, playing time and the like. But that only goes so far for so many guys because Bubba Bolden, that was not the issue. Levi Jones, that was not the issue. So there's a lot. It's a very, very complex problem, and USC's biggest issue is you can't have this many transfers and also go 5-7 because it's just all going to look bad.
Right.
Agreed. Well, thanks to Andy for calling in. We appreciate the calls. We have a question from Jarrett Perez on YouTube who says, who is the most versatile offensive lineman? And no, Alicia, you cannot blame Bob Connolly for this. I had to get that in there.
Oh, I will, though.
Who's more versatile now?
Andrew Voorhees has started at guard and tackle.
Yeah.
So
I feel like they had more versatility the last couple of years. Like now people are sort of set in positions a little bit more.
See, the interesting thing is that Toe Lobendon was that
that guy.
But then he was stuck at center. It's weird, and he's also gone now. AVT maybe? Elijah Vera Tucker?
Yeah, or Jalen McKenzie maybe.
Maybe, yeah.
Because, you would look at guys that could play both. No, maybe it ends up being like a Justin Dedich. If he pops out to guard or something and ends up, winning a spot, like that would be, I think he can be a really good center. And if you notice that, Dan Weber talked about this, you weren't really seeing any bad snaps yesterday. So that's something that's kind of gone away.
He put JT Daniels on the spot. He was like, how did it feel that every snap came right where you wanted it to? And JT was just like, go, Dan.
Oh, Lord.
But, yeah, so I feel like there were more versatile players in the last couple of years. I don't think this is as talented as an offensive line as USC's had the last couple of years, just overall talent. But it might perform better just because better coaching.
Well, it might just be more stable in terms of the guys that they're going to throw out there. And I don't know. And that's the thing that USC grapples with, right? It's the balance of talent and guys who fit and guys who have the right mentality. Like, I think that's one of the things I like best about Nealon and Dedich. Like, feels like they have the right mentality, and it's I worry that Justin Dedich is going to lose the center battle and then be stuck as a backup when I would love to see him get a chance at guard, but at the same time I don't trust USC to take the risk of moving him to guard knowing that they don't have anybody else to play center in case something happens to Brent Nealon. But like it's that kind of thing where maybe it's not as talented, but if the mentality is better, because Chuma Edoga is super talented but couldn't get consistency out of him for anything. Toa Lobendon couldn't get consistency out of him either. So if all you do is bring this group to be more consistent, you will be miles better than before.
And I think if you look at I think of leadership and veteran status in kind of like a bar graph. And the O-line last season, in my mind, was you had these veteran guys, and then you had these guys sprinkling in with less experience. And now I feel like it's been raised where the average is more equal. So guys like Austin Jackson feel comfortable stepping into a leadership role. Whereas I feel like last year, if you have guys like Chuma Edoga, Toa Lobendon, Chris Brown, you can't really be that guy to take up the room because there's guys who've been there longer than you and have more experience. So from my point of view, that would kind of be awkward, So now that there's more of an opportunity for those guys to step up and make a more cohesive group.
The single best sign, we talked earlier about captains and leadership, the single best sign that you could, if you told me going into the season, USC names their captain and an offensive lineman is a captain, single best sign that USC could possibly have.
Toa Lobendon was the captain. I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Just poking holes at her story.
Okay, Toa Lobendon was a senior. That's the difference.
No.
That's the difference.
No, I think she's right. If one of those guys, if it's Austin Jackson, you're like, whoa, he must have really made strides and is going to become a leader. You want your left tackle to be a leader on this team. You got a young quarterback back there. I think that's a good sign. If he does enough to earn the captainship.
Yeah, I mean, if you had to take a stab at captains right now, do you think anyone stands out?
Probably Pittman, right?
Yeah.
John Houston.
Do you think that JT will be the captain if he wins the starting job?
I kind of think so.
That's my. I'm guessing that, but at the same time, are we going to read into it if he's not? I think that's my question is, can he not be a captain if he wins the starting job? Will we read into, well, he's the starter, but he's not the captain, so they really bought into him, and yeah.
Yeah, he talked about that's something that he wants to improve on in spring is being a leader. And he said, it's my second year here, but it's my first spring. So he's kind of been in that limbo position where I think spring you have more an opportunity to establish yourself as far as chemistry and leadership. Whereas I think fall, especially in JT's case, he had to hit the ground running just in play, let alone trying to get with chemistry with guys. But do you think him having to fight for that quarterback battle again puts him at a disadvantage trying to establish himself as a leader?
I mean, he's still young. He's gonna be a true sophomore. I don't think you ding him if he doesn't become a captain. And I think he'll work on that too. I think he's a pretty confident kid. I think he thinks he's going to win the starting job. We think he's going to win the starting job. So I don't know if he's worried about that all that much. But I think he just wants to perform out there and look good in this offense. He didn't want to have the kind of numbers that he did last year. What was it? 14 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, something like that, whatever it was. I mean, he's not used to stuff like that. He's not used to losing records. So I think he wants to make sure he's performing at a high level. And, the leadership stuff will come.
We have a question on YouTube from Richard White. He says, how did Stephen Carr's back look yesterday? Did he have that same pep in his step that he did prior to the injury?
I thought he looked pretty good. I talked to him. He said he was 100%. He actually hurt his ankle later last year. So that was some of the problem. I mean, I tried to get him to talk about his back, and he was like, no, man, it's great. He's all good. A1, 100%, whatever he was saying. So, I think we put the pads on. Does he look like he's got that spring, that kind of explosiveness again? I kind of think he will. But he's saying he's fine.
There was one run that I noticed him where it felt like, oh, there's Carr, and it was just sort of weaving through some traffic and just felt like, okay, that looks better. Like that looks. I don't know if it's confidence or if it is being actually 100%. He said he was 100% at the end of fall camp last year. It was like, no, you're not, dude. but even if it's just the confidence of it, I thought not like they ran the ball a ton on Tuesday. So the one time I really did notice him, it was in a positive sense of he looks good.
I think he did look confident. When he spoke to the media, I think he was very confident. So I think that's a good sign.
Yeah, I would agree. We have a Facebook question from Randy. It's an interesting one. He says, what is Clay and company going to have to do in order to bring back optimistic Alicia?
Oh, Lord.
I wish we had the drops.
Yeah, do the
Actually,
drop in real person.
I had them at some point,
Really?
because
I don't think I can't look at another screen.
What is
No,
it?
no.
What is it? What is it? I think this is a case of optimistic Alicia.
I think this is a case of optimistic Alicia.
Yeah. Optimistic. Okay, so optimistic Alicia doesn't need any help to come out because I am at heart an optimist. And just being back out on the practice field and seeing these guys got me optimistic. I'm like, look at all those wide receivers. Like, they're going to be great. And look at Vi Malapaya and Stephen Carr. He's going to be great. And, look at Brent Allen. He looks half decent. Like, that's going to be okay in the secondary. I talk myself into this crap every single year. So I don't know. Basically, what optimistic Alicia needed to happen was for Clay Helton to say what he said on Tuesday, the way he said it, and institute the changes that we saw in practice. That kind of, I'm not 100% bought in. I'm still pretty much sitting in the skeptical point of view, but I'm also in the skeptical and open to the possibility of these changes potentially maybe working out. So maybe that's not optimistic Alicia, but it's not that far off of it. So
stock neutral Alicia.
Stock neutral Alicia.
You guys and your catchphrases. And
Love
stuff.
it. I love it. So we actually have a live caller, I believe.
Nice. We should probably we'll do that.
Oh,
one
true.
more
I didn't
question.
even realize it's 7:19. I'm trying to.
Time just flies.
This is nothing, guys. Come back to me when you podcast for 2.5 hours.
3-hour marathon pods. Dr. K, I believe you're on the line. Hello.
Hi, I am calling from Salt Lake City, and I've been watching your show for some years. My son graduated in 2014, and certainly for the last 9 years. But my question was that I know you've talked about discipline for a while, and things have changed. Last year, I haven't seen anything like it, and I'm sure everybody else hasn't, of lack of discipline on the football field. I know the first practice you've seen some changes, but are you familiar, obviously, with many other teams here, even though we're in Salt Lake City, Utah? They've always been extremely disciplined. They play game by game. We followed them for many years, but we are Trojan fans. What are your thoughts on that?
Thanks, Dr. K. Yeah, no, I think there was, a lack of accountability. When people talk about discipline, it's about players making mistakes and nothing happened to them. And I think we don't know what's going to happen during the season, but from what we saw in practice, that was definitely a 90-degree turn. So at least you're going in the right direction. to instill that kind of discipline you have at Utah, that's part of the culture. I think that would take a couple years to do because Utah and USC recruit different players. USC's getting like the 4 and 5 star guys all over the place. Utah's developing players a lot more. I think that takes a little bit of a time. Time to do that, but it doesn't mean you can abandon it completely. I think Clay Helton's taken some steps in the right direction as far as discipline goes, but it's going to take a while to change the culture if he keeps doing that. But I think you could make some real tangible changes, at least from what we saw.
Yeah, I not a day goes by that I don't end up quoting Remember the Titans, but I always think attitude reflects leadership, and I think discipline is a part of attitude. It's a reflection of attitude, and I think that, for instance, Kyle Whittingham, that's what he's a disciplined guy, and then his team is going to take on the personality of him in terms of that discipline. I think where Clay Helton has maybe gone astray here is Clay is a little bit too nice, and this is something we've been saying about him for a while. Is I don't know if he has that disciplinarian bone in his body where things that are unacceptable are actually made unacceptable, like that, and players know that there is no budging on those kinds of things. So Ryan talked about how Helton had a little bit of a different feel on Tuesday. Maybe that's him trying to put his foot down and instill that discipline. But again, it's the process, and you need to do that not just in the first practice, but literally every day going forward. So it really is the culture, and USC's culture has not been one of discipline. Maybe the steps that they've taken from Helton being a little bit more serious about it, maybe the new coaches that they brought in can help change that culture, because assistant coaches absolutely play a role in that culture. The strength and conditioning coach, Aaron Osmus, maybe is also a guy who can help turn that tide a little bit. But I'm with Ryan. It takes a couple of years, if not 2, 3, 4, 5 years, because everyone on the roster needs to be sort of inculcated in that mentality of what won't stand. Yeah.
We got a couple questions about
Thanks,
this.
Dr. K.
Yeah, thank you. It was related, but thanks, Dr. K, for calling me.
Did you get rid of him? Or?
I did. I muted him. Sometimes, just FYI, if you're calling in, sometimes I mute you guys if you're too loud in the background, or if I'm just deciding to mute you.
Keely's tough.
It's tough.
I was going to talk to Dr. K.
Keely.
What
That's
kind of
me.
doctor is Dr. K?
True. That's Dr. K.
Dr. K kind of sounds like a cereal.
True. That's true.
One of those off-brand
Not Special K. It's
Value
Dr. K.
food or whatever.
Value food, Dr. K.
But we got a couple questions about Clay's new quote-unquote persona in spring, and they said, does the tough guy act really stick if Clay's been known to be the player's coach, and is it an act, or do you think it's sincere?
I mean, you deal with people in your life every day. You and Michael have a working relationship. Like me, if Keely came in and was like yelling at me one day, I'd be like,
It'd be normal. That's how it usually
no,
is.
like if Keely was she's normally very nice. If she's suddenly mean, or I'm the one that usually teases her, if like she's teasing me all the time, like there's something you might be odd at first. I think for Clay Helton, yeah, I mean, him yelling like he was yelling like that, if they're not used to it, that might be just like a little cockeyed sort of thing. But hey, I'm doing push-ups when I commit a penalty. I'm going to respond to that. I'll be like, oh, I don't want to do that. I think we've talked about this a lot. Just changing things up. Like this is what we do at practice. We do this and this and this. This was giving Clay Helton an opportunity to make sure that actions had consequences. It wasn't just going to be no matter what you do, how bad you screw up this play, we're running the next play next. Like that's not going to be the case anymore. So I think, yes, you can be a little hesitant to be like, does he normally act like that? But there's tangible things there. Like there's a flow chart. It's not just a line that you're going to follow. ... It's going to be like, oh, if you screw up here, we're going to go this way, and if you screw up here, we're going to go that way. So I think I get what you're saying, but I feel like they've made some tangible changes that you could actually feel, and I think that the players might react to that a little bit better.
Yeah, the key for Helton is finding the balance where he's still him. I mean, how many coaches, players, everyone talking about how it's important to be yourself because players will sniff out if you are putting on an act. And so Clay just needs to be careful that it's not an act being the serious tough guy who's like that he really does care that things are perfect or that things are at the standard that he wants to set, right? If it's coming from a genuine place of, no, guys, I really care and my job is on the line, so like we're taking this seriously, then he can get away with that. The problem is if he's gone through this offseason and decided like, well, Nick Saban is a tough guy, so I need to be a tough guy, and I'm gonna put on my John Wayne accent, and guys aren't gonna take that seriously.
No.
You got to find the way that you be genuine to who you are, but also stay on top of things.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point.
I think Greg Burns also helps a lot. Him screaming was pretty effective on day one. For me, I think the key is, they say this with parenting a lot, like if you're going to set expectations and say something, you have to follow through. And I feel like sometimes we've seen, some conditioning after practice or up downs for a mistake, but then it doesn't happen towards the end. We kind of forget about it. It kind of just loses its
crunch time, and they're not going to do that. But you have to do it the whole time.
The whole time. Like if you're a good parent, you enforce what you say you're going to enforce the whole time.
Yeah.
So I wonder if it's that type of deal. If they're gonna do that.
It's hard to say after one practice, but it's definitely a change. So they needed to make changes. I didn't feel like the offseason enough was changed. And like you had brought up Aaron Osmus. I think that's a big, changing strength and conditioning coach is a big deal. It was sort of an underwhelming hire because it's a very familiar face. He hasn't worked in college football for 5 years or whatever it is. So it's been a little, that's not really what you would kind of expect. But I think just changing out your strength and conditioning coach, you're going to change the culture a little bit. And maybe someone coming from the outside will be helpful. I mean, hard to say, but I think that's something that could potentially be a positive, however good of a strength coach is, just seeing a different voice there and getting a different point of view and a different regimen as far as workouts go.
Well, even just looking at practice, that they warmed up a little bit different, that they did a little bit different drills. Like you could tell they could not have been going through the motions on Tuesday because you could tell they weren't entirely sure at all times what exactly was going on. And you don't want to be running around like chickens with their head cut off, when the fall comes, but you keep players on your toes when you ask them to do something different, and you engage their brain differently. Like variety is an important. I mean, anyone who exercises knows that at a certain point you have to change up your exercise routine because you can get into bad habits just doing the same thing over and over again, and you can lose interest, and you can, at least I
You'll
get bored with
plateau
things.
and stuff.
Yeah, you plateau. You got to change up your thing. So it's the same thing with everything that they're doing here. You needed a change. Especially because Clay Helton, before he got hired as head coach, had been at USC since, 2010. So, everything that he had been doing was something that was built off of something that had come before.
Yeah.
And you get 10 years down the line, and it's not everything is exactly the same as it was, but you're still working on that same foundation. So, shifting it up can be helpful.
Boss man, we have a caller on the line. Are we allowed to take the call?
Yeah, I guess. We're going kind of late.
I'm sorry, Alicia. Don't kill us. We have John from Irvine, I believe. Hello, John.
How you guys doing?
Hello.
Good, John. How are you?
Good. Wanted to touch on hope you guys could touch on the QB competition and whether or not you think Harrell's presence this year will really make that happen, and specifically with respect to the fact that both he and Kingsbury, really did utilize a QB that could use his legs. Mason Fine, Kingsbury's guys at Texas Tech, they all use their legs, and will that actually factor into the competition? I think everybody thinks JT is going to win the competition because he supposedly has the best arm, but that isn't, Sam Darnold showed that extending plays with his feet, could open up guys downfield, and they did that at Texas Tech and at North Texas as well. So thoughts on that, guys?
Yeah, no, I think we had a much there was more, I guess, film we could watch on Cliff Kingsbury than you could with Graham Harrell because he had Mason Fine most of the time, and he was a really effective quarterback there at North Texas. But we've seen Cliff Kingsbury do it with pocket passers and guys that were more mobile, and it's been a pretty wide range. And I think in this offense you can have guys that are more pocket guys. I think the most important thing is getting the ball out fast. I don't think it's not some sort of run first offense. I think having athletic ability is helpful, but if you can get the ball out fast, there should be guys, with all the guys, flooding the zones and spreading the field, you should be able to find somebody open. And we didn't see that a lot in this USC offense the last couple of years. Guys weren't really schemed open that well. I think they will in this offense.
I guess what I'm saying, though, I think we know that, but that's if we don't have the other option. And the question is, will the new coach actually factor that into who wins the competition this year in a way that didn't happen, when Clay and T and the Gumbo O were running full steam last year?
I mean, I think it's going to be a part of the decision, but the quarterback, the most important thing you can do is throw the football to guys that can catch the football, and I think that will be it. I think Jack Sears that'll certainly give him some sort of advantage in that. But if he's not throwing the ball as well as JT Daniels, I don't think that's going to matter. I don't know what you.
Every quarterback coach that I've ever heard speak has emphasized the idea of, yes, it's nice to have somebody who can run, but the number one thing has to be that you are the best thrower, not just in terms of like arm strength, but in terms of decision making, understanding of the scheme, and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's why we all assume that JT will win the job, because it's going to be very hard for Matt Fink or Jack Sears to overcome him enough for their running ability to even be part of, because the running ability thing becomes a tiebreaker if all things are equal.
Yeah.
And with JT, it's just all things are not going to be equal because of the level of sort of football brain that he brings to the table. Where you might equalize a little bit with Jack Sears, I think, is that he does have more of the arm to compete there. And I get the sense from him that he's a guy who is a go out there and make plays kind of guy.
Yeah.
And what we're hearing briefly from Graham Harrell, it's not a ton that we've heard so far, but just hearing from the receivers, hearing from the running backs, hearing from everyone, Graham Harrell is very much just go out and make plays. Just make plays. Like, that's simple.
And I'd argue that, Sam Darnold's ability over Max Brown was, a lot having to do with the fact that he could make things happen with his legs, not just actually in the run game, but to extend plays and get guys open and then throw on the run. And that's something I think the other two guys maybe could do. But I don't think that was possibly even a factor for Clay last year. That's what I'm saying.
No, and I think I think if you're worried that he's not going to get a chance, that like Matt Fink or Jack Sears, I think they're going to have a real shot at this. I do think it's a real competition. I think Graham Harrell's not coming in with any kind of bias. Maybe Clay Helton wants somebody to be, whatever. But I think Graham Harrell, if he says, hey, Jack Sears is our guy, for whatever reason, if he sees practice for the next 15 practices or 14 that are left, he's like, dude, Jack Sears is our guy. I can make this thing work. I think he'll be the guy. But it's going to come down to who Graham Harrell thinks. Just because he's athletic doesn't mean he's going to win. But I think that's going to give him, a little bit of an advantage. But it's going to come down to who Graham Harrell wants, I think.
For me, it's going to come down completely to the scrimmages. And I think fans have to remember. I mean, Jack Sears was very impressive against ASU, but we all watched what he did in spring camp last year, and it was not good.
Yeah.
It was not good, and he was erratic even in the fall. He had some better performances, but he still had some pretty low lows as well. So he needs to stabilize that and then go out and make plays in the scrimmages. If he does that, I will concede totally that this could be a real possibility. But I really, really, really want to see that first scrimmage and see if he can produce what he did against ASU in a practice setting consistently from week to week. Because if he has the lows that he had of last spring, he's not going to be in the competition. But you're older. This is why guys train. This is why guys work to get better each year. And so he's going to have to give himself a chance if he's going to want it.
And you might see even regular practices. If you have Graham Harrell up on the roof calling plays just at random, it's sort of scrimmage like. So that might give him a little more. So if he's more of a gamer, and a lot of people feel like Jack Sears is more of a gamer than a practice guy, maybe that's simulating the game a little bit more, and you see him perform better in practice than he might have last year.
Especially with a simplified system.
Did you guys see any read option in yesterday? I know it's only one day.
I don't remember seeing any. I don't even know if we can talk about that stuff, but
I will say I didn't see any quarterbacks tucking and running, except I think Jack Sears did tuck and run in 1 7-on-7, but that was like, when you tuck and run in 7-on-7, that's not a good thing. That's a covered sack.
I think Slovis also ran for his life on one play.
I think Slovis fumbled and had to recover the ball and then was just panicking. Yeah,
Tuesday's a blur though. Thanks, John, for calling in. We appreciate
Thank
the
you,
call.
John. That was great.
We have officially kept you as our latest guest.
Hey,
but
it's on brand, Keely.
It is. For your late podcast, we're late on the show, but people loved you. People are already telling you thank you so much for coming on before we're even done with the show.
Hey.
Yeah, we do appreciate you coming in. We get bored just talking with ourselves all the time. It's nice to get we had Bruce come in or whoever have you come in. We've invited other people. We'll see if they'll come.
Is that a preview, Ryan?
I don't know.
So we were trying to play like a secret password game, not really, but trying to get you to have a food analogy, Ryan. You haven't had
I
one in
didn't
like
do one.
3 or 4 shows.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, can you think of one off the top of your head?
For what? I don't know.
I feel like the Tuesday practice was like cotton candy. It was good while it lasted. Will it
just
be
melts
there
in your
long
mouth.
term? We don't know.
That's not bad.
Thank you. Taking over for Ryan.
Yeah. So there was a secret
It was
password. I
Fat
needed.
Tuesday.
Not
on
really,
Tuesday.
but we YouTube the peanut gallery. We joked about it a little.
Oh, they wanted to be okay. Yeah.
it was.
If I think of, I like analogies. Just kind of think of it.
Okay. Yeah, the YouTube's going more Alicia, more Alicia.
Nice. You
Aw,
got the Rotbot
shucks.
people. Like I think the
yeah, the
Rotbots
Rotbots
came
are
on.
strong.
Robot Nation.
They roll deep.
Yeah, Rotbots came. Thanks for Rotbots for coming on and
Yeah.
And watching. We had a lot. I think YouTube was pretty good.
YouTube, we have a strong showing on YouTube. Facebook, they're a little sluggish.
Come on, Facebook.
Yeah.
Get your act together.
Yeah, today was more of a YouTube day. Well, maybe because we had the YouTube questions were coming up on the screen.
Maybe.
That's kinda
They
cool.
get their moment now. That's pretty exciting.
I did like we had pretty good live calls and stuff.
Yeah,
That
well
was
done,
all right.
everybody.
I just wanted to see people stacked up. I wanted people on hold, like to try the new system out. But I'm glad that I forget
Sounds
who.
stressful, Ryan.
No, but I'm glad people were like they could listen to the show while they were on hold, and
Yeah.
So that's good.
Look at us. We're
We're
moving
trying.
on now.
It's
We're
better
trying.
than what the
Good job, Keely.
Thank you.
the
Thank you.
Google
I'm
voice.
impressed with your management of
Thank you.
the.
It's a lot.
She's got a lot of screens
multitasking.
there.
Someone asked if we can get players or coaches on the show. Is that legal, just like NCAA wise?
We've done it before. So we used to do a live show on Ustream like way back in the day. Like it was funny. We would get like this was Matt, but this was like 10 years ago, I guess. Like when me and Gerard would do it. So we had like Matt Barkley. We've had T. Martin on, Ed Orgeron, and we did a show at like McKay's or at Mitch Mustaine on. We did at Traditions. We've done
Traddies.
We used to do it. We do it there. It's funny. Matt, when we got Barkley to come on, that was like our lowest rated show. Like the fewest amount of people like live because I guess those guys are like you see them all the time. They wanted to see like we had like Vidal Hazelton or something, and every people liked it. Or no, Bryce Butler was great. He was awesome.
Oh wow.
So we've done that before. We can do it remotely if we would get them to do it. We could like have them just do it like over like a Skype sort of thing. So we could potentially do that. USC's been a little bit more restrictive as far as giving us access to people. So it would be on that end. We could do it. We've asked before. We'll see. I'll try again and do it, but it's tougher. I think the off season, like we could have assistant coaches and stuff. We had come in. I had Dylan McCullough come in for.
You know
for
what
a
was the most
podcast back in
interesting
the
one
day.
that you've done when you had was it Eric Ziskin?
Eric Ziskin. That was
This
a
is
great
one podcast I didn't listen to. I
Oh,
don't
it
know
was
why.
great.
Something was happening and I just missed it. I never went back and saw it.
My hot take is that like players are mostly boring and coaches are mostly boring unless you get guys who are in doing things that you don't actually know exactly what they do. Like hearing what Eric Ziskin actually did was interesting because you never hear from somebody like that.
True.
So yeah, getting like the guys that you don't normally hear from or the guys who are willing to be candid is.
We've put some requests in for people like that, and we're denied. To be
multiple
fair, I
times.
don't think it was. It's not necessarily sports information, but like this has to be cleared by the coaching staff. So
Yeah.
sometimes they don't want that. But I agree with you that people love that show. That was a podcast. It wasn't like a live thing, but we'll try. They let him on before. Maybe they'll have him on again, so I can put a request in for that. But thanks. Yeah, who was that comment from?
That was from John DeMijo.
Thanks, John.
DeMillo. I'm bad at pronouncing names.
right.
Also, I'm supposed to let you know, Alicia, that Man U is coming for Liverpool.
My
Ryan, soccer.
my brother was just telling me he wants Liverpool and Man U to meet in the Champions League, which I do not because I don't want that stress in my life.
It's a foreign language to me. I do not.
Yeah, I don't understand that
Really.
stuff.
Five good soccer seconds.
We
You got them in there.
Yeah, Shotgun's not a soccer guy, right? Like
No.
he tries to talk
Baseball.
basketball and baseball, so I have to like
Shut that down quick.
yeah. We did. So yeah, it was pretty good. I thought we'd get usually we would get a lot of strength and conditioning questions. We didn't get much of that today, but that's all right.
Do you think it's odd because Clay Helton was the first time yesterday that USC acknowledged strength and conditioning a hire, and then they tweeted it out today? That was a little odd to me because in my mind I thought they had said it earlier.
No, they hadn't officially announced it, and I asked Jordan Iosefa about his early impressions of him, and he was like, "I don't know, I just met him yesterday." So like, this literally happened on Monday. Like,
Wow.
him getting in touch with the team. So it's very, very new.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, but
Yeah, it's like he is for my, criteria for hiring a coach. He is like the anti-Elvis.
That's a great point.
Right. As far as every tie he has basically comes back to USC somehow.
It's a nice circle.
You couldn't have a more, close to the program sort of hire. But they could have went Chris Carlisle, I guess, but he was around for a
Just
while.
like a swap.
It would have just been a swap with Seattle. I don't know. I mean, it's people want to be comfortable with that's a guy you're going to be around a lot. So I get the fact that you want someone to be comfortable, but sometimes you just have to go outside of the comfort zone. I don't think Brian Kelly at Notre Dame hired a bunch of comfortable guys. I'd have to go back and look, but I think it was more just you got to shake it up a little bit. But just having a new, it's not a food analogy, but I think I've said this before. It's like getting a new gardener or something. Like it's different. Like they're going to trim the hedges different or cut. It's going to be different. Having a new strength coach is just going to be different, and I think they need it different. So it's positive just making a change.
The one thing I'll say about him when he was at USC, I don't think anyone who's currently on the roster was there. So he's a new voice to the players. If you're looking for a silver lining.
We couldn't end this show without a Michael Castillo food hot take.
Oh, no.
He says, except cotton candy isn't good.
Oh, Michael.
He is the worst. Oh, my God.
He hates everything that is good. And that's not true because there are some things he actually is on point with. But 90% of the things that everyone in the world agrees on, Michael just
But
takes
he,
out.
for the sake of just hating on things. It's not like...
See, I'm so torn here because I am part of the super taster community, so I can't hate on one of my own.
You have you don't like spicy food. How are you a super taster?
Because I taste the spice too much. Yeah, that's the point.
You taste things more strongly. I don't like spicy food, and I'm not a super taster, so
But his takes are whack. Just saying.
It is whack. I didn't see him. He usually jumps on.
He's on
Periscope.
Facebook.
Oh, he's on
today.
Facebook.
He's an old man on Facebook. No offense to everyone who's on Facebook.
Wow.
My bad. My bad. Didn't even
shots
spell
fired.
those on Facebook right now. Before we wrap up the show, anything final thoughts about practice, football in general, life, Alicia, that you'd like to say on the show?
I'm just thinking of when I go on the What's Brewing show. They do a segment, What's Brewing with You?
Oh.
So
Are you allowed to mention that school?
Am I? I don't know. It's dangerous. I mean, at the very least, UCLA really could be sticking it to USC right now, and they are not. So, you can fall back on that. No, it's been really, really fun. It's been really good. I've now made my TV debut, which is exciting.
Have?
Yeah. And I'm excited to get back out to practice because now we have stuff to talk about. That's my favorite thing about getting back is not having to rewind the same discussions every 2 seconds.
Yeah. And it looks interesting. I mean,
it does.
You want it to be not boring. I don't think practice is going to be boring. So once they put pads on too, could be kind of fun. Or it could just slow down to a halt because there's not enough bodies to put the pads on. But
true. That's a big TBD on that one.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Alrighty, that's going to wrap it up for today's episode of Tunnel Vision. Once again, thank you so much to Alicia for making the long trek down to the studio. We definitely appreciate it and appreciate you. That's Ryan Abraham. I'm Keely Eure. Ryan, what's our schedule going forward?
Wednesdays.
Yeah,
6
we're
p.m. keep doing Wednesdays, 6 p.m.
Even though next week is spring break, USC doesn't have practice, we will be there talking all things USC football, so that will be fun.
Yeah, maybe we'll get another guest. I don't know. We'll see.
Shotgun's just able. Okay, that's going to wrap it up. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you guys next week.
See ya.
See ya.
For that tunnel vision.
Woo.